For Nigeria to go forward, a whole lot of things have to be considered. We must really sit down and begin to look at ourselves squarely and begin to look at the consciousness that is indeed necessary for us to progress as a people. We must begin to build the necessary framework we must build if we ordinarily want to progress as a people. We must sit down within ourselves, ask ourselves the necessary questions we ordinarily must ask ourselves. Questions surrounding the fact that we have been badly treated, not completely by those we don't know, but by our brothers and sisters, our fathers and mothers, our aunties and our uncles, by ourselves, by the poor decisions we've made, by the poor choices we have allowed to be our reality, by the lack of exposure and the lack of critical thinking that ordinarily should drive our politics, that should drive the ways we get to do things, that should drive our day-to-day activities down here, that should drive the ways we ordinarily want to be educated, want to be enlightened, want to eat, want to worship, want to pray, want to live, and ultimately the ways in which we ordinarily should come to die. But these are things we've not given core attention to. These are things we've not really invested our time and our money and our situation in. These are things and these are times we have not given ourselves the chance to really think critically and ask ourselves, what can be done to better my life? What can be done to better the life of the next person close to me? What can be done to better the life of my family? What can be done to better the life of the community I live in? What can be done to better the country I come from? What can be done to see that going forward into the future, lives will be secured, our economy will be stable in relation to the realities of geopolitics, in relation to the realities of global economics, in relation to the ways life have been led and life continues to be led in different places, how people get to live their life, how people get to interact with other people in response to a thing like cosmopolitanism. These are the questions we ordinarily as Nigerians have to answer. If we don't do this, we would see to it that we ordinarily go into extinction. We would see to it that little or nothing will be done to ordinarily get to champion our cause down here. We would see to it that before our very before, that we would die, life would fizzle before our very eyes, and we would be left with nothing in the nearest future as it concerns responsibility, as it concerns trying to live life here. Because for the greater part of our existence down here, it seems we've come to be overwhelmed by the realities of the 21st century, and trying to cope with such a reality ordinarily has not been an easy thing for most of us down there, for most of us as Nigerians, for most of us as Africans, and by extension for most persons also in the world. We have not been ready for change. We don't want change. We don't want to see change. We don't want to see things ordinarily get to change. As such, we continue to hang around, live the way we live, eat the way we eat, want to die the way we want to die, and basically hope for nothing. We are just like left in the basic strata of existence: need for food, need for pleasure, need to die, need for immediate families, immediate needs, and with a few persons raising the bar a bit higher for themselves to psychological needs and all that. But then for plans that ordinarily will come to see that generations yet unborn will get to benefit from the things we ordinarily do, sometimes we seem to have been lacking behind. Most times it appears we have been lacking behind. These are things we must do if we ordinarily must foster unity. We must begin to criticize our elders for the places ordinarily they have come to pass down things to us that ordinarily don't meet logic, that ordinarily don't make sense. We ordinarily must begin to think logically about how we must go, the things we must do, the things we mustn't do, because it makes sense that we criticize them. It makes sense that we allow ourselves also to be criticized. It makes sense that we put things before us, either in a strata or on a spectrum, and get to x-ray the beliefs we ordinarily come to hold, and get to see how we must come to foster new ways of thinking about our existence and thinking about the realities that ordinarily has come to be our life. Else we will fall prey to the whole idea of he's an elder, you shouldn't criticize him, he's a pastor, touch not my anointed, he is a ruler, he shouldn't be criticized, he's a chief priest, he shouldn't be abused, nobody should be abused anyways, he shouldn't be called to question. He's my father. Nobody gets to ask their father questions or what I ordinarily don't get to understand. She's my mother. She's all right. She's all just. She knows what she's doing. We must come out of that situation. If we ordinarily want to make sense of our life down here, we must come out of such positions. We must see to it that our lives ordinarily come to be better than ordinarily what we have at the moment. Because what are the ways we want progress than ordinarily wanting progress the way we ordinarily should get progress? The ways we should get progress is by getting progress, and the ways to get progress is by ordinarily doing what we're supposed to do. These are things we've not done. If you look at your life squarely, you get to see how you waste, how you die slowly, how you fizzle out, how you go down that path, not seen, never to be seen, without the possibility of anything promised to your daughter, promised to your son, with almost nothing promised to the next generation. We don't completely know what the next generation is going to hold, but at least what we know at the moment is that we should be able to pass down to our kids, pass down to our offspring, pass down to the next generation a more befitting and a more comfortable world, devoid of the sufferings and hardships we ordinarily at the moment tend to face. But sometimes it just happens that we don't think about this. And even on a global scale, even on a large scale, it looks as though that's the problem. It looks as though that is how we've come to have life. And it's not a good way to go, because it speaks of irresponsibility on a whole other front. It speaks of disunity within ourselves on a whole other front. It speaks of a gap that ordinarily must be met and filled, merged together, and to allow for smooth sail and smooth traveling by ourselves or by those coming after us. These are many more are the ways. There's a whole lot to do indeed. It starts with leadership. It starts with how we ordinarily get to see life. It starts with how we ordinarily get to perceive our existence down here. It starts with how we ordinarily want to see life go, how we want to see ourselves succeed, how we want to live, how we want to die, how we want to be remembered, if at all we get remembered, how we ordinarily want to get out of the state of nature and make sense of our existence, because we are more than what we are currently doing in a place like Nigeria. We are more than what we are currently doing in Africa. We are even more than what we are doing in the world. How do we call this life? Devoid of peace, devoid of joy, devoid of things we ordinarily can get with our God-given creativity. All of these opportunities channeled towards wars, channeled towards things that will prevent insurgency, and at the same time channeled towards the exploitation of a whole lot of persons on a geopolitical scale. How do we live in a world so much wealth managed by few persons as opposed to the greater majority of persons that can benefit from this? How do we even become comfortable in such situations? These are many more things I don't know. These are many more things I cannot answer. You have to do the answering. I have to do the answering too. But I can't answer for you completely. We need to come together and sit down and tell ourselves we are in a pretty bad shape and we need help and we need saving. And the faster we get out of the train, the better for us. What I mean by getting out of the train here is getting out of the train to enter the right train that goes to our right destination. We continue to ride in vain and we continue to ride poorly. Our lives can only be directed by ourselves. Nobody else, nothing else. We are the only people that can do this for ourselves. Nobody else is coming to save us. Let that sit down there. Not the US, not the UN. Nobody is coming to save us. We have to save ourselves if we ordinarily must make sense of our life down here. Nobody is coming to save us. It is that serious. And we will continue to have the crop of lawmakers we have, and the crop of politicians we have, and the crop of students and bankers and lawyers and engineers and auditors and law enforcement agents and agencies, the crop of ministers and directors and commissioners that we have, until we tell ourselves we need a turnaround. Because the next time you sit down and look and ask yourself, who are the ministers? Who are the directors? Who are the politicians? Who are presidents? Who are governors? Who are senators? Who are the lawmakers we ordinarily come to elect or allow to be selected into office? Who are judges? Who are those who are bankers, our engineers, our builders, the masons we have around, our house help, our hookup babes and guys? Who are all these persons that tickle our fancy and make for the current existence and reality of Nigeria? Who are there? They are nobody other than the people we ordinarily know. Our brothers and sisters, our fathers and mothers, our neighbors, our enemies, the strangers ordinarily that still come from the same place. But ultimately, we all know them. They are human beings. Whether they have hearts like us or they have different heart formation and mind formation, it's a thing up for debate. But at the core of all of this, it is the fact that you and I have failed ourselves. And you and I can ordinarily struggle and try to see that we make sense out of our existence down here. It is a thing that must be done. It is a thing that must be done and must be done fast. It's a thing that should be done no later than now. The last time to do this, it's already gone. The next time that is ordinarily right to do this is now. The longer we wait, the longer our problems persist. The longer we wait before we try to get into politics and come to understand the ways we ordinarily should get out of our problem is left for us. The faster we ordinarily start changing things, the more sane our lives here will become. Because there's no sign with the current ways global politics and economics, the global economy is going, there's nothing that points to the fact that anything is going to get better. Not some wishful thinking. I even make do to say not even prayer. Not what Pastor Adeboye will get to tell us about the whole idea of him praying and halting the increase in dollar. It makes Christianity look as if it's a joke. It belittles the idea of a God. It belittles the idea of what ordinarily God should do and what he shouldn't do. Because if God can make the dollar stay at about 1,700 naira, that's 1,700 naira. Why can't he just make it to be on the normal level where ordinarily it should be? It brings us back to the Epicurean dilemma. The whole idea of if there's an ultimate and all-knowing and all-good God, whence comes evil? Because if he's all-powerful, he ordinarily should not even have allowed it to happen in the first place. And if that happens, that means he's not all good. He's not all powerful. And if he's not all powerful and then evil also gets to happen, that means he's not all good. So he's either almost none or at times he can be one. Because if he's all good and all powerful and all knowing and allows this to happen, then why call him God? These are the type of things these type of men of God try to make and champion back home. And it stings the devil when I hear this. They talk about tithe, the whole debate and argument about tithe. Bazaar from the Catholic Church to different places. It is so sad that we get to see people who don't ordinarily understand basic life models and basic ways of doing things in the world and basic life theories come to pontificate about some spiritual stuff. And I understand why they do that. Because most of the time there's no way to verify. There's no way to ordinarily get to check. Because all those who've talked about robbing God by giving to God have never given to God so that they can get money. There are laws that govern money. Money is a human construct. It has nothing to do with God to a large extent. To a large extent, it has nothing to do with God. One might even argue that it has nothing even to do with God. But then we see men of God sit down and tell us the things they tell us, and we listen to them with all manner of seriousness. And they get to champion these stories, and we fall for it over and over and over again. Pastor Adeboye has done a whole lot in this regard. He's not alone. Pastor Eneche, the wife, Becky, and a whole lot of other persons down there say these things, and one sits down and one gets to just feel so ashamed of oneself. Same thing also that happens in bazaars. The faster you come out to give, the faster your miracle. Are we being serious? In the 21st century, oh, in the 21st century, it goes to tell us how irresponsible we have ordinarily come to be. The building of wealth in the world has to be learned, and the ways such have been done ordinarily has to be championed by ourselves. We must learn how it works. There must be product, there must be services to drive an economy. Outside of this, I don't see where miracle money is happening. I don't see where any bank has printed money and given to anybody without following the laws of banking and finance. It is either you are borrowing money or you are lending money or money is being given to you as mortgage or whatever that is. You are signing a contract. There ordinarily ought to be a contract. And most times it takes the tone of legal positivism. That's a conversation for another day. But let these guys not sit down and deceive us. It tells us how badly educated we even are and how poorly enlightened we are, or how we can allow things get to sway us left and right, front and back. We must go back to the root. We must sit down and want to look at our problems squarely and want to figure out our issues well. We need to be an overhaul of all our systems and ways of doing things. We must return to ethics. We must return to virtue. We must return to integrity. Because like Chinua Achebe said, the truest test of integrity is its blunt refusal to be compromised. We've been compromised and we've compromised badly. We need to go back. We lack integrity. We sell ourselves so cheap. It is not what we should do. It is not what we must do. Our lives down here are precious, and the ways we get to live life here ordinarily also should make sense. At the moment, it is not really making sense. The divide between the rich and the poor is so wild. The margin is so wild. You can't even talk about it. Many persons just exist in Nigeria. Many persons just exist in Africa. Many persons just exist in the world. As much as there are bad people in Nigeria, so also are there bad people everywhere. Same thing also with the good number of people, but the good people seem to be fewer and fewer. I don't know if you are one. I don't know about myself. But I know what I must do. I know what the things I should work on. I know the things you ordinarily should work on. Whether we are working on this or not is a conversation for another day. But we must change if we need change. Not the change of Buhari, not the renewed hope of Tinubu. These are not guys we should look up to. Because as Nigerians, we have fewer and fewer role models. Not even our leaders. Not even our leaders can be looked up to. Because they have done things ordinarily that they shouldn't do. And they allow us with little or no choice moving forward. As such, we must look for a common ground to see that our lives become better down here. A better life, different from the life we've led. We shouldn't burn down the bridges. We shouldn't just say because we suffered, others coming after us also we should suffer, because that's what many persons tend to do. A lecturer gets to tell you, during our days, it was like this, it was like this. So you also should be like this, should be like that. Why? Why must that be so? It can be better. It should be better. It must be better. If we ordinarily want to make sense of our existence, we shouldn't transfer the sufferings we had to our children and to the next generation taking over us. We shouldn't say because people before us stole government money, so also we ordinarily also must continue to steal and be wasteful. This is how it has been done from generation to generation. As such, we must continue like that. No, it doesn't make sense. It can never make sense to me. I don't know about you. I am Biringkpa bin Emeka. I'm your brother, the mendicant. See you next time.